when you just think you can't go on anymore, there's nothing left. I'm totally in the dark. I'm at a loss. Is he even listening to me? Does he even know my name? God is there for you, and maybe, just maybe, this is the time for growth for you. This is how he's stretching your heart, your mind, and your soul to trust him that much more.
This is the Mentors and Moguls podcast with Heather R. Stone.
Okay, so Father Pete, I am so excited to talk to you. I'm going to do my best to be on my best behavior, but I already know that this is going to be a lively conversation. How are you doing today?
Good stuff. Good stuff. Great to see you, Heather. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Well, I was actually looking forward to it. I love our conversations. So as you know, today we're going to talk about faith. We're not going to talk about faith in a very strict and boring way. We're going to talk about faith coming from left, right, center, and every which way. So get ready, buckle up. I know you're going to have some terrific answers for me. First of all, well, welcome to the show. Let's talk a little bit about you are not the average man of the cloth.
I've been in the Army as a priest for 9 years. And right now, I'm actually on assignment to encourage other priests to come in the Army and do what I do. And it's a wonderful ministry. It's meeting people in their workspace. And these are people who are looking to serve their country. But because of the First Amendment, thanks be to God, I get to drop in and either perform or provide what they need to live their faith.
I think that's terrific. You have a very engaging personality, but let's color outside the lines because that's what you do.
Okay.
You don't just keep your feet on the ground. This is the most interesting thing I can talk about in this minute right now. Tell us what I'm talking about.
All right. Please. So I think you're interested in the fact that I'm a priest and I'm a paratrooper. Is this where we're going at? So from when I was a little boy, and I can, Heather, if we were to put the DVD in for A Bridge Too Far, it was an old movie, Robert Redford, big all-star cast. There's a scene in that movie where there's an airborne operation. I could freeze frame it. I could show you. It's like, this is it, Heather, look at this. This is where I was like, I want to do that. I want to be not just a paratrooper too. There was something inside me that I didn't even know they were called jump masters, but I was like, I want to be the guy that leads them out the door. Like, this is awesome. I want this. And it was a big part of my motivation to become a soldier. And I was blessed. I was given a scholarship. I was an ROTC student and I was commissioned back in the 90s, but it was at the end of the first Gulf War. And there was no budget. There was nothing going on. They were downsizing dramatically. I think it was the first year, just for like a little note in history, a footnote in history, West Point. So West Pointers who were given this full 4-year scholarship in the most prestigious university in the United States. The top 10% of the West Point class, the year that I graduated, top 10% were given the option to take an inactive reserve commission, meaning, raise your right hand and then go get a job because we don't want to pay you. That's how dramatically they were downsizing.
Wow.
So the dream went on hold for, about 17 years. And then lots of twists and turns. I leave my life as a school teacher and I was an Army reservist I resigned that commission to join the seminary, become a priest, always hoping to come back and to do exactly what we're doing here right now. And I came in 9 years ago and I was given the opportunity to jump out of airplanes. And I was like, yes. I have a boss that says, that guy's not happy without a static line in his hand. The static line is what deploys the parachute. He's like, that guy, all he wants to do is jump. And I love it. I love it for the opportunity it presents. Because when you're with people who jump, and when you're with soldiers that jump, first of all, there's a lot of time. Like it takes time to set things up and to get things going. So there's a lot of time waiting around for equipment, for the airplanes to arrive, for the pilots to do the brief. And that gives me time to walk around and talk to soldiers. So soldiers who might not come and knock on the chapel door and say, hey, Father Pete, can I have a conversation with you? They kind of look at me in a whole different light. And I love that. I just love it. It's just so genuine. Like they're spontaneous, organic conversations that aren't this like, hey, get over here. I want to see you at church. It's like, it's none of that, but it leads to that.
Well, you've got kind of a captive audience in a sense. I'm putting myself in these shoes because I can't think of arming myself with a better companion than saying, yes, I'm going to jump out of an airplane if I'm a little bit nervous. Well, I brought a priest with me, so come on. My odds are much better.
I'll tell you a quick story. I was on it's called a stick. So when you line up with your parachutes on, you get on the plane, we call it a stick. And then like that group of soldiers, that stick will walk one after the other right out the door and go on to the drop zone together. So I'm on a stick and it just so happened that it was the medic, this young soldier, and then it was me. And this soldier's looking at him, looking at me. He's like, I feel pretty good. I'm like, yeah, you ready to jump? He goes, well, I mean, am I going to do any better? I like, one's going to take care of my body if this doesn't work out, and then you'll be there to take care of my soul.
Well, I'm thinking it's not a bad way to do it if you're going to do it. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Have you ever had anyone just completely refuse? I know the military says you get up and you go, but have you ever dealt with someone who just is panic stricken?
Great question. That's such a great question because there is a term for that. You're called a jump refusal, and you're subject to United States, Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ. Like you've taken on an obligation in being a paratrooper. And if you go up there and you just like refuse to jump and your equipment is squared away and there is no reason for you not to jump, you'll be subject to courts martial.
Really?
You'll be brought before the commander. It's a process. Like, I mean, we could talk about it, but it's the end of your airborne career, of course. And you may receive loss of rank, loss of pay. I mean, it's because it's so important. I think I'd want to impress upon your listeners. I don't want them to go away thinking like, wow, like the guy's just having a bad day. He doesn't jump and that's it. I could tell graphic stories of like why guys didn't jump. Let's just say that if they had an air sickness bag, it would have been very convenient. But they didn't. So, and we take that into account. A guy gets really nauseous. It's like, we'll motion like this because you can't hear anything on the airplane. So we'll go like, we'll point at somebody and like nod at each other. We'll take him to the back of the airplane. We'll get him out of his parachute rig. So now it's obvious he's not jumping.
Got it.
But the guy was just like, he was doing the technicolor yawn, as we say. So
got it.
All right. So, but to out and out refuse just out of, I mean, am I going to say it out loud? Just out of cowardice, just because it's like, wait, I don't want to do this. It's like, in reality, newsflash, who really wants to do this? Talk about, God bless you for this whole series you're doing. About getting out of your comfort zone. Like, hey, paratrooper, hey, soldier, let's go. This is out of your comfort zone. It's out of everybody's comfort zone. Pointy bullets are out of everybody's comfort zone, but we deploy to go and do bad things to bad people. And this is part of that training, and it's just necessary. So to answer that's the long way of answering your question. I never encountered a jump refusal, but I'll give you this. I had a guy dog sick dog sick. We're up in Alaska. We were doing what's called a racetrack when we need to buy time because the drop zone's not ready. Maybe there's vehicles moving around on the drop zone, and it's not really the best thing to like jump out on a parachute when there's trucks rolling around the drop zone. Right. You don't want to be on top of a truck or below a truck.
No.
No, we want to avoid that. So sometimes the pilot approaches, the light goes on, we stand up. It's like we're waiting for, and the red light goes on. It's like, okay, we're waiting for a green light to go. And then it's like, and you're so pumped, you're so amped, you're like ready to go. You're forcing yourself, like, okay, I'm doing what I have to do. And then it's like red light. And then they like, no, we're going to racetrack around. So they'll do literally like loops. And some guys just want to get sick. And so one guy, he didn't refuse. And he's like, I want to do this, chaplain. And he was so sick. I was like, you're not doing this. I'm scratching you. Sit down, like get in the back of the plane, sit down. So he was not a jump refusal. He was a really brave trooper. But he was just, it wouldn't have been safe. It wouldn't have been, the juice was not worth the squeeze to get that guy out the door.
Got you. Okay. So this leads me to a conversation that you and I have been dancing around for a little while now. So much like the gentleman, the doctor, the young doctor that the medic that you jumped with, I think that you and I need to jump because I don't like heights. I got over a lot of my fear of heights on those swinging bridges on Everest, but I still have a thing. And I said, one day I'd like to jump out of a plane just because to face fear and totally get out of my comfort zone. And the other part says, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely terrified. I'll probably freeze. But then you came in the picture and I thought, well, if I'm gonna do it, I might as well have someone strapped to my back who's done it 100 million times. And then you right there with me. I mean, my odds are pretty good, right?
Well, all right. So full disclosure, where I'm at. So let's talk about this. The minute that we had this conversation, you completely motivated me to, and right in line with what you're talking about, getting out of your comfort zone. Right now, I'm on a desk job. I mean, like I'm at a desk job. I travel 3 weeks a month. Lots of paperwork. I'm not on the line where I was. I was in infantry battalions, paratrooper infantry regiment, and I did other things with in SOCOM that I jumped. And now I'm not jumping. And the clock ticks. And as the longer it goes from not jumping, the more, the skills get stale and your courage kind of gets stale. You're like, and I was sitting around, I'm thinking like, wow, if I don't jump, I'm not going to jump for another 30 months. Like, and then I'm fully expecting, like my boss has already told me, they talk out of two sides of the mouth. It's great. I mean, I love the guys I work for, but it's like, hey, don't get hurt. But yeah, we need you to do that. Like, it's good. Keep up those skills because we're going to need you to do that again. You're going to do that again. And I'm like, all right, which is it? Do I jump out of the airplanes or not? But when it was expressed to me that way, I'm like, I know I'm going back. So then let's just face this. And I'm going to say it. I'll say it out loud for the benefit of I mean, I have loads of time. I think I tallied up my time. I probably have like 30 minutes. If you put all my time together, I probably have over 30 minutes under canopy, which is not a lot compared to some paratroopers and some jumpers. They have so much more. I'm somewhere in 70 jumps for myself. Wow. But there are guys out there with 500 thousands of jumps. And when I said, well, I'm going back to this, and we were talking, I said, you know what? I'm not going to civilian skydive as a tandem jumper. Let me get my license and let me see what I can do. I can't be the tandem driver for you, but we need more time. We could do it in 3 years. I need a lot more time in certification, which shows the level of competency that those tandem drivers have. But 6 jumps to my first license, my A license. I'm 6 jumps into a 25 jump. As long as my skills go well, and they're doing fine. I'm having a blast. And thank you for motivating me, because now it got me something. This is a great one for your listeners about getting out of your comfort zone. The minute I decided I'm getting my A license, okay, I'm doing this. The minute I did that and I went there, I'm like, I felt so much better about the idea that, oh, I'll be fine when I go back to the airborne community. I'm going to be fine when I go back to having to jump for the Army, because I'm doing it now. And you have to stay current. I mean, you know that. You have to. How good do you feel when you don't go to the gym for a few days?
Yes, it's been actually 2 days now. I've been hitting it hard every single day for 2.5 hours. 2 days now, and I'm going to go when we're finished with this. I can't take it.
You're climbing the walls.
I am. I'm a little cranky. I'm not going to lie.
But isn't that a beautiful reinforcement of how God wires us? How God wires us, and He motivates us to do the things, like even when we're doing something right, and it's at a cost, it's at a price, it's at a sacrifice to get to the gym, it's at a sacrifice to build up the courage to jump out of an airplane, whatever those sacrifices are. But He kind of wires us to encourage us and say, hey, no, you're going in this right direction, and I want you to miss it. I want you to, and ultimately, what's that all about, really? I want you to miss me. I want you to miss me. That's what God's trying to tell us.
Well, you realize how much you need God when you're standing there and you're saying, okay, that's at least 13,000 feet below me between of nothing but thin air, right?
Well, you certainly experienced that on Everest.
I did, but I've had visions of maybe we could I'm into breaking records this year. At the end of this year, I'm going to be breaking some world records and setting some world records with some things that I haven't revealed yet. And maybe we can be the first podcast interview while jumping out of a plane. I don't think there's any way for us to speak while we're doing it. I probably won't be able to say a word other than something I'm not supposed to say in front of a priest. We'll see.
Well, so the way I'm envisioning it right now for us, if I get my license, all things being equal, we'll board the plane together. You'll be strapped to a tandem driver.
Right.
I'll board with my own parachute, and we'll jump at different levels. And because you're two people jumping under a canopy, you're going to jump at a higher level than I'll exit at.
Oh.
But we're going to be able to fist bump, and I'm going to wave goodbye to you when I jump out of the plane. And then okay. I'll be right on the ground to greet you I'm going to see you coming in.
Okay. All right. You're going to give me last rites on the way down, or how's that going to work?
We'll prepare for that beforehand.
Oh, good. Great. All right. No problem. All right. Well, thank you for chatting about that, because we're definitely going to do that. We're not going to wait 3 years. We're going to do that together, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And we will get that on film.
Okay.
So let's talk about something that we talked about a little while back. And again, about faith. So no matter what your religion, your spiritual practice is, whatever it is, I believe that there is a God and that God can fix everything. You can go to a human or you can go back to God. And I do believe in the power of prayer. But these times, especially with what's happening in the news, and, there's potential wars looming. People are taunting us around the country, us being United States and military. When you get someone coming to you and asking you questions because they're not sure of which way to turn, and they're questioning their faith, how do you tell someone, or how do you talk to someone when they're saying, I used to have faith, but this issue, this problem, this decision feels so much more daunting. I'm not sure I have enough faith in my faith. What would you just say to someone when they say that to you?
I'm going to bring it right back. I'll bring it right back to our conversation about going to the gym, because that's going to be my first question is, let's say you have a goal of squatting 225, and now it's like, I don't know if I can squat 225. So I'm going to ask you, well, have you been training for it? When was the last time you went to the gym? Like, are you set up to? So when it comes to your faith, it's not rocket science. It's a lot like working out. There's a spiritual fitness that comes from a faithfulness to dedicating yourself to the Lord and to prayer regularly, not just, we can't go to the gym just willy-nilly and think that we're going to be in great shape. Mm-hmm. Why do we think that we can just go to church willy-nilly or say our prayers like when we feel like it? If a professional athlete went to the gym when he felt like it, he wouldn't be a professional athlete very long. Every athlete out there, whatever their discipline, it's a discipline. They're getting up early. They're going to bed late. They're watching their nutrition. So from the faith perspective, that's what I usually ask is when people come to me with doubts, and I want to hear them out. I want to know where they're at. I'll give you a quick story. I had a young couple come to me petrified. they were scared out of their mind. And they made an appointment with me because I saw them, like, saw how scared they were. Like, Father, we got to talk to you. And I just knew that this was going to this wasn't just a quick like sidewalk conversation after mass. And I said, do you guys have time? And they said, yes, like whatever. I said, let me say goodbye to everybody. Why don't you go to the rectory, talk to the secretary, let you in, just relax. I'll come and see you in the parlor. And, so I get over there and they're so ready to talk to me about this situation that they were experiencing all this paranormal stuff in the house. They were convinced that there was just creepy stuff. And they found out, so-and-so committed suicide here. And I don't know what's going on. And we don't know what to do. And I hear them out and they're frightened and they want to know, can I come and bless the house? And, maybe this will go away. And, how can you help us? So I listened to the whole conversation. And from the conversation, I'm getting the fact, they're together, they're living in this house together and all that. So my first question is, and this is, I know you have a broader audience than this, but so let me just define it. As Catholics, and I think most Christians would agree, there's an old fashioned term that still holds about living in sin. It's like, right. And I get it, our culture, the broad culture, it's like we've gone from living in sin to actually using these terms of endearment of baby mama and baby daddy. So we'll leave that over on this side. But from my faith tradition and what is their faith tradition, and many Christians would agree, it's like, until you say I do, I don't live with you. We don't sleep together. This is what we do. So I just asked them, I said, and I knew they were both Catholic. I said, so you guys married? And they looked at me and they're like, what does this have to do with ghosts in the house? I said, let's start with that. I was like, you guys aren't inviting the Holy Spirit into your relationship by doing something and they immediately they start looking at their sneakers, and they're like, right. No, I know, Padre. I'm not like, we've been talking about like we're in between jobs. All the excuses come out. Like, we're going to get married, want to have a big wedding, and I was like, stop. I was like, you came to me for advice. Here's my advice. First thing you do is you don't live together. And they're like looking at me. I was like, in all the conversations, like, there's no reason why you can't go and live with your best friend. You become roommates, put it on the calendar. You love each other. You want to be together. And so I guess this went into a whole longer conversation of, where are you at with your prayer? Where are you at in your relationship with God, with the sacraments? And to bring it back to the gym story. It's like, do you own a pair of sneakers? Well, no kidding that you're not running. All of that comes into play. So when people struggle with their faith, I encourage everyone, go back to what were you taught? What did your parents teach you? And what, and are you living up to that? Now, some people don't have that kind of an example, but start with the basics. Are you being faithful to God? Or is this just, you're pulling the fire alarm right now, which is okay. And he's going to hear it, but boy, is he going to answer more, and are you going to answer and respond? That's the better way to put it. You're going to respond more in earnest to him when you're doing the right thing. You're going to have a holy confidence. There's a confidence that comes with holiness. There's a confidence that comes with integrity. And that's the confidence of David versus Goliath. That young shepherd boy with a rock and a sling going up against this huge giant of a warrior. He had the confidence of holiness. This guy doesn't stand a chance. And he tells him, he's like, you don't stand a chance. And he kills him.
That's a great story. Great story. So if someone, let's say they didn't have a role model. They're not fairly religious, but they say, okay, but does God still hear me? If I just started today because I'm in a crisis and I'm on my knees, like, I don't know where to turn. I have no hope. I need something to cling to, whatever their crisis is. Someone's just told them they have a deadly disease or something just has jolted their life pattern. Can someone feel confident that God will respond to their prayers? And can you expand on that?
He absolutely hears every prayer that's spoken. He hears everyone. And he responds. Now, I'm going to use it. I'll use an expression here, where it, depending on the situation of the person, and he judges us individually. Mm-hmm. He knows our hearts. He knows us better than we know ourselves. So to the person who is in earnest and for whatever, through no fault of their own, just is at a very fundamental relationship with God. And here's the analogy I'll give you. The 55-gallon drum versus the thimble. What a vast difference. And all the sizes in between. But God wants us to be full. God wants us to be full. He wants to fill us with his grace. And he responds, and we have to respond to him, and we're accountable to him for how full we are. So when people say, and I get this all the time, it's like, well, hey, Padre, you're a priest. And I'm like, stop. Like, first of all, holiness, personal holiness has nothing to do with whether or not I'm a priest or you're a plumber or, you're a skydiver. What personal holiness is personal, and God knows how he's created you. He knows if he's made a thimble, a beer mug, or a 55-gallon drum, and he wants you full. And so now you have to ask yourself, are you living your faith? Are you responding to God's grace in the way he's called you to? And if it's only a thimble, he's not expecting more than a thimble full of you if this is how he's created you. And to the contrary, if he's given you a disposition and an aptitude for holiness and a 55-gallon drum, and you've only poured in a thimbleful, well, that's on you. That's between you and God. So I don't know if does that help in terms of,
it does.
So maybe in growing in their faith, in their infancy of their faith, maybe they only have this much and they're contributing that much, and God's going to respond to that, and it's going to overflow. He's going to fill them, and they're going to overflow. And I think here's a good one for your listeners, though, especially, and I know they're out there, and I want the listeners to know, I'm going to pray for you and your listeners and your mission in a particular way. I want to offer mass for them, which is really the greatest prayer that I could offer as a priest. And I want them to know that when you just think that, like, you can't go on anymore, there's nothing left. I'm totally in the dark. I'm at a loss. Is he even listening to me? Does he even know my name? God is there for you. And maybe, just maybe, this is the time for growth for you. This is how he's stretching your heart, your mind, and your soul to trust him that much more. Because growth doesn't happen when it's all good and easy. Growth doesn't happen in the gym. Like, Heather's not getting any gains today by lifting the 5-pound weight over her head once and walking out of the gym saying, I did gym time today.
Right.
It comes from a deficit. And to go back to the gym analogy, muscle failure, right? When you train, like talk about training, right? We train the muscle failure.
Right.
Do we pray to muscle failure? Do we pray? And that's what God forces that on us. It's a gift. It's a grace. He forces us to a sense of spiritual failure. He's not listening. My kid's in jail. My husband left me. How could he do this to me? He's not going to give you what you can't handle, but it's going to come real close. It's going to be that sense of muscle failure.
No, that's a good analogy. A great way to put it. I'm sure in the military, people are feeling this way because they're in extreme situations. They're completely out of their comfort zone when, as you say, the pointy bullets start flying, or there's a real mission. It's no longer practice. And I'm sure that you speak to people all the time that are saying, wow, it just got real. And I don't know if I can do this, right? I don't know if I can do this. Or I'm just got in the middle of a firefight and somebody didn't make it, or there's injury, all the terrible things that the brave people in the military face. So we can have the freedom to do podcasts, to jump out of planes and do fun things, right? I mean, I'm so grateful for your service and everyone's service, but people are at a point saying, I need something right now. I can't go on, or give me something to cling to because I don't have the strength anymore. And it kind of piggybacks on the last question. But have you come across that with people in the line of fire all of a sudden? And what kind of things do you tell them? And how is the follow-up with that? Did it help them?
The first answer I want to give you, and thank you for your gratitude and for your listeners' gratitude to the service of our men and women in uniform. They sacrifice a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when you thank a soldier, when you thank a sailor or thank an airman for their service, you have no idea what a lot of them have to endure beyond the pointy bullets and the explosions. They live very dangerous lives, and I'm setting this up in a very deliberate way. They live a life of danger and risk that most families and married couples, especially, and I'm speaking to those who are married soldiers, with families, they live lives of risk because of the demands of the job and separation from each other. And there are so many moral dangers to their service, so many moral dangers to their service. I mean, yes, the bombs and the bullets, and I'll address that. But I want to speak first because that's the most prevalent. In my work, especially as a chaplain, G.I. Joe is away for training for a month, and his wife Jane is back at home, effectively a single mom, wrestling those kids and trying to get. And it's like, and this is going to go on for a month, and now it's going to go on for another 9 months because he's got to go to the border mission near the Ukraine, or fill in the blank. Right. And all of that back and forth and the separation, it takes a toll. They need to learn how to communicate more, not less. You don't have the physical proximity. You got to learn how to communicate even more when you're separated from each other, not less. When you're home and when you can hear the door, you hear the garage door go up. It's like daddy's home. The kids run downstairs. There's a rhythm and a connectedness that you have that keeps you secure, and it keeps you faithful to each other. But when those things aren't there, you got to find other ways. And then, all of the moral dangers that come in, whether it's drugs or alcohol, whether it's marital infidelity, there's just so many things that they really face that I would say that's the bulk of my counseling. Now, as far as and that's where it comes to, like, talk about stepping out of your comfort zone. You got to learn how to be alone.
Right.
You got to be alone. It's like, hey, you're alone. If you're going to start looking for comfort, whether it's in a bottle or in another man or another woman, that's not going to end well. And it's okay to be uncomfortable. This is a time for growth. This is a time to really prove your love to someone too. I mean, going back to the unmarried couples and being old fashioned about not playing house, not living together, not sleeping together before you're married. There's so much value in that. You're investing in each other. If you can learn how to say goodnight before you're married to somebody, even though you have this attraction, you want to be sexually intimate, but we're going to wait till we're married, because you know what you're doing. You're proving to each other, I can wait till we're married. And guess what? After we're married, there's no one else. I've already proved to you that I don't need to act on these desires and these attractions. You're worth waiting for. You're worth waiting for now, and you're going to be worth waiting for 3 kids from now.
Right. Yeah, it's different society from when I was growing up. I mean, the social norms are very, very different. You can call it old fashioned, you can call it whatever, but I do think that there's been a lot of confusion that's born out of the breakdown of the family unit per se. And you can take that 20 different ways, but it's tough. I think it's tough for women. I mean, I would go through the struggle of that all the time, saying, should I be in the home? Is it okay to work? I really want to work. Where do you sacrifice? And am I contributing? I mean, I think it's a tough one that women wrestle with. I think more men and women wrestle with it now together than they did maybe 30 some odd years ago when I was having kids. So, but that's a whole nother conversation, but it's a struggle figuring out what should I do? What should I not do? And
it really is. It's gotta be a conversation. I love the way that you mentioned, it's gotta be a conversation between the couple. It can't be all one, like, I have to do this for me. It's like, wait a minute, like, this isn't us. This is an us thing that we got to figure out. I often counsel my soldiers. I tell them, I use this line all the time. The Army's not worth your marriage. I get it. You love being a soldier. I get it. You love jumping out of airplanes and making things explode and all this other stuff. But the Army is not worth your marriage. And there comes a point in a soldier's career that I tell them straight out, like, hey, I'm up for promotion. Hey, it's like, what does your wife want to do? If she wants to go, it's time to go. And I'm not saying in a foolhardy, like, we all have bad days and all this, but as far as the plan goes, usually for soldiers, it's like the 10-year mark. It's like, are we going to do this for 20 years and get a retirement? Or while we're still young, like we just, especially for young soldiers, they're 28. If they joined when they're 18 and now they're 28, it's like, are we going to commit to do this until I'm 38? Or do we do something else? And a lot of times the answer is we got to leave for the good of our marriage. And that's a good thing.
That's got to be tough.
It is. Marriage is tough.
Yes.
Right.
Everything worthwhile has got to take some work.
And there it is.
That's very, very true.
To go back to what you'd asked though, I have one story, where I was in the Middle East and the plane landed with troops that were coming into theater. And we had suffered a loss of five heroes that day died. There was a suicide bomber in a marketplace, killed 5 American heroes. We had a ceremony for them, and everybody on that base lined in single file, but facing each other to make a lineup for what are called the transfer cases. A lot of people would mistake them as caskets, but they're not actually a casket. A transfer case is enormous because it's the remains plus all of the equipment and everything has to go in there, and it's treated with such dignity and respect. They're draped in the American flag, and we have this hasty ceremony as best we can in this environment to bring the transfer cases up onto this plane. Now, soldiers just got off this plane, and on come the transfer cases. And I had the honor and the privilege to be able to bless their bodies, and the ramp goes up, and it's called a ramp ceremony. The ramp goes up and the plane flies away. And plane flies away, and I know the soldiers that just, like, this new group of soldiers that just came off.
Right.
Their eyes are as wide as saucers. They're like,
that's gonna rock them.
Talk about you use the expression, like, it just got real.
Yes.
Like, I mean, they had no clue. They had no clue that, like, the plane that they got on, and they had just, like, hugged their girlfriend goodbye, kissed their mother goodbye. And and now that plane maybe refueled somewhere in Europe, and now it landed here in theater, and they see these, they're like, what? And I went, I spent a little bit, I saw it. I was like, hey, like, let's, and I like, they were just get ready to get, like, welcomed to the next 9 months of their life.
Yeah.
And I kind of, like, I told the NCO that was there, that was ready to process them, because he was like, okay, I was like, hold on a second, let me talk to these guys. And we had, like, a little debrief. I was able to talk to them. It's not like this every day. It's not going to, like, listen, this is why we take our training seriously. And, these are the things that can happen. And that's why we pray for them and we look out for each other. But it's, it was rough, because you can go on a tour and by the grace of God, nothing happens. Right. And then you can go on a tour and that's day one. I mean, can you imagine how they were on edge for 9 months, those guys, but maybe in a good way, maybe in the best way. And maybe that's going back to God stretching them. And, like, this is like, I'm at the end. Like, what did I do? Why did I sign on the dotted line? Why aren't I in college right now? Why aren't I working at home construction with my brother right now? And I joined the Army. Well, it's not like, this is it. Let's face our fears. Let's go.
Oh my goodness. Well, yes. I mean, none of us have any idea. We can put ourselves in scary situations, but that's next level times 10. So yeah, I don't know how I would feel. I just think you'd be shell-shocked and rocked and say, can I get back on the plane and go home?
Well, and isn't that the first instinct though? Isn't it like, hold on, like can I get a seat there? And it goes back to the whole jump refusal thing. And it's like, no, it's like, here, it's time to go. And I hope this conversation inspires your listeners. Getting out of your comfort zone doesn't have to be this dramatic. It could be as dramatic as tell yourself, make a commitment to yourself tonight. I am not hitting the snooze button tomorrow morning. It's not an option. I'm a snooze button refusal. I am not hitting the snooze. I'm getting up and I'm going to the gym, because we've all been there where it's like, now I'm at work. I'm at my desk, it's like time for the meeting. And it's like, I hit the snooze. I didn't go to the gym. And like, now I got all this stuff today. I'm not going to get to the gym today. Whose fault is that? Say no to the snooze button. Stop. And like, and it takes courage. It takes courage to do something as simple as that. And I'm not inflating this. I know it's not on the level of the courage that we're talking about with our soldiers who give their lives, but where does it begin? Where does the discipline begin?
Yeah.
And it begins with don't hit the snooze button.
I think the discipline also, I wasn't going to bring this in, but you did just bring up a point that touched on it with soldiers in there and basically, the moral temptations and things that mask. And I think in the United States, that we look for a pill for everything. And I know that we are all over medicated for anxiety, for stress and things like that. I mean, just two, and then you're addicted to that. And then you've got another problem. So you see where I'm going here. You're saying, okay, going to the gym is one thing. How can you use your faith to say, I'm not going to pick up that bottle. I'm not going to take another pill. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to get myself in a program, something to really fend off and arm yourself with an army behind you to say, I don't want to live this way any longer because it's not working out too well.
No matter your faith tradition, it all begins with humility. No matter what your faith tradition is, you have to be like those successful, and you've met them, you know them, and your audience knows them. Those people who have recovered from addiction, what do they tell you? I'm powerless. I'm an alcoholic and I'm powerless against my attraction to alcohol. And I have to give myself to my higher power. I got to give myself to the Lord. And it really begins with humility, to have the humility to say, all right, I need help. And then there's another adage that I'll share with you and your audience. It's a great one. And it's only to my shame when I ignore it. And it's by God's grace, and it's to my joy when I embrace it. It's a phrase in Latin. I'm going to lay a little Latin on you there, Heather. You ready?
Okay, go for it.
Primum non principere. You might even be able to figure it out. It's an adage. Primum non principere. And loosely translated is, if you want to make sure that you don't want something to get started, don't let it begin. Primum. First and foremost, primum non principere. First is not to begin. Non principere, don't begin. You don't want to, like, whatever it is, what those bad habits, the attraction to alcohol, it's like, hey, I don't want to drink. Well, then what are you doing in the club? What are you doing at the bar? We want to make a commitment to ourselves. We want to be chaste and faithful before marriage. We don't want to sleep together. Well, then what are you doing on the couch watching Netflix at 2 a.m? I learn how to say goodnight. Primum non principere. I want to keep on my budget. I don't want to spend. What are you doing scrolling through Amazon and putting all sorts of things in your shopping cart or your wish list? Primum non principere.
Well, that's good. I think everybody can take that, write it down, and remember that, because that's a good tool. I do think that everyone is looking for faith again. I do think that we're almost making a full circle. I think we've gotten a lot of people have gotten away from it. And I won't even talk about the media and all the things that come in to try and really confuse us and distract us and all the sensational garbage that's out there. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. I do have a question for you. It seems, I don't even know the word for it. It seems like two completely opposite ends when you say you've got people that are praying up and people that are going to take someone else's life. Granted, they're defending the country and they're defending the country and it's like good versus evil. So I get this part, but isn't it, they're juxtaposed to one another. So how do you counsel someone that has to go out and maybe take someone's life in order to defend? Do you see where I'm going with this? Help me with this conversation. I got a good
story for you with this.
Okay, good.
It's a very good story. I was in theater in the Middle East, and I had a conversation with a senior NCO. He was a leader who makes lots of decisions, and there was an upcoming operation that was it was going to happen that night. Like they were loading up and getting ready and getting fitted and to go, and people were going to die, and
right.
and like there were people that were going to die that night, and please God, it was all going to be the enemy and none of us.
Mm-hmm.
But they were going to have to go out for this to go well. These men had to go out and kill people. This is just it. It's that plain. It's like,
right.
This is like
that was the mission.
That's the mission, and this is what's going on.
Yeah.
So I'm chatting it up with him, and he's just got some time. It's the calm before the storm. It's the calm before, okay, like it's go time. And we'd all be, up all night until they come back. Like they're going to go out and we're going to follow this operation on the radio and all this other stuff. And then they'll come back like early in the morning kind of thing, But we had this calm in the late afternoon, and, we're kind of at the end of it. He's at the end of his cup of coffee. And he goes, well, chap, I got to get going. He says, keep us in your prayer tonight. He says, we're going to do a lot of stuff tonight. And then he shared this with me. He says, I got a couple of new guys with us. He said, and we're going to see how this goes. He says, one of two things. And I asked him, I was like, wow, what do you do to prep them for? He's like, well, they're trained, they're ready to go, but this is really and truly like their first time. Like, this is it. He says, now I got to deal with them. He says, because some of them, this is all they're ever going to want to do. And they're going to have a taste for this thing. And it's like, whoa, time to slow down there, cowboy. Like, this isn't like what we do all the time. It's like, you got to relax, and you got to dial it back, because we don't want them full of bloodlust.
Right.
But at the same time, he's like, I'm going to have guys that they're going to do this and they're going to get a taste for it. And this is all they're going to want to do. And it's like, I gotta reel them in and say, oh, hold on. And then I'm going to have guys that are going to do it just as well as those guys. And they're going to come back and go, I don't ever want to do that again in my life. And I'm going to have to tell them, we got to go out again tomorrow night. So you talk about the two ends, and my prayer for my soldiers all the time is that we've got to train in such a way to be the fiercest army in the world, so that an army is at its best when it's feared by its enemy. Yes. Because when an army is struck with fear of an enemy, you can win a war without firing a shot. It's when you're weak, and if the enemy's starting to have a conversation that, hey, maybe we can take them, that's not the position that you want to be in as an army. As an army, you want to be in the position of strength and power, that just the thought that we're coming in your zip code is going to be enough for you to say, all right, no. Let's go back to the table. Let's go negotiate. Let's go back to diplomacy. We don't want this, because what are we as an army? We're an arm of diplomacy. After all the talks have failed, after everything's been tried, the ambassador has now been taken out of that country. It comes down to soldiers at arms. And if you dare raise arms against us, we're coming at you with everything we got. And my prayer, and I know this this might grate on the ears of your listeners, but I use it all the time in the Army, and I'll say it freely. My prayer is to go, and you got to go shoot the enemy in the face, and then we got to come home. And that's what we're doing. And this is not about like the time for talking about things. It's all over. This is what it's got to be. And we do it without apology. We do it without hesitation. This is what they're trained to do. And it's time to execute. Please, God, of course, as a priest, like I'm not saying this out of bloodlust, like, yeah, we're going to go shoot the enemy in the face. But if that's what it's coming down to, well, this is the decisiveness that anything less than that is going to get you killed. And your brothers in arms, they're going to get killed for the same kind of hesitation. It's either it's go or we don't go.
So do you must have people that come back, the ones that said, I don't ever want to do that again. How were the conversations when they come back and they said, I had to do it. It's me or them. I had to do it. That was the mission. They were shooting at my buddy. They were shooting at me, whatever it was. I don't think I can live with myself. Do you have those conversations, and are those people going to be okay? I know that everyone's different, and I know there's PTSD and all of that, but how would you talk to someone to say, I can't believe I just did that. I took another man's life or woman's life.
You're bringing up an excellent topic that I think helps sort it out. I mean, and I want your listeners to know I'm one piece of a puzzle of support that they get a lot of support. There's doctors, like psychiatrists, and there's debriefings from seasoned soldiers, because they have each other, like who've been there before, and they can talk to them and talk it through and get to a place of reconciling what we can define. I'll use a term that maybe you're not familiar with, reconciling the moral injury that they've suffered in having gone to battle. This term, are you familiar with the term moral injury?
Well, I haven't heard it but I mean, it says everything right there.
I hope you understand it for what it is and not for what it isn't. Because when I first heard it, I'll tell you, when I first heard that term moral injury, I kind of winced. I was like, what are we now? We're talking about sin, but it's not sin. Like what? And it has nothing. It's not about sin, because we're not talking about guilt of sin when it comes to moral injury. Moral injury is addressing the fact that a person is not unaffected in taking life. You suffer a moral injury. We're God's creatures. There's this deep inside of us. There's this love for God and neighbor. And, we don't always express it as best we can with each other, but to take another person's life, it's as monumental and as life-changing as becoming a parent. When you become a mother or a father, your life has changed forever.
Right.
Your life is not the same. It's but by the fact that you've given birth, and taking life has that same weight to it. Just as parenthood, or I should say, just as giving life. Let's just. I'll give an example. A woman gives birth to a baby. There's no moral quality to that. She's given birth to a baby. But there is a moral quality in the sense of, well, she brought the baby to term. She didn't abort the baby. All right, there's that whole thing there. But the circumstances surrounding that birth, was it welcomed? Was it out of wedlock? All those moral qualities. But all of that aside, the moral qualities aside, her relationship with another person in this world who is destined to live forever. The two of them are destined to live forever. They have a relationship that will never change. That will always be that child's mother. And that soldier will always be the one who took that other soldier's life. So now, how do you deal with that? And hopefully it's with good advice from veteran soldiers. It's with good advice from the psychiatrists and the psychologists. And it's good advice from his chaplain. And he comes to terms with it that way. And what we see, unfortunately, is that if they don't have the humility, goes back to humility. If they don't have the humility to open up to all those structures, well, that's when we start talking to Johnny Walker, and that's when we start looking for needles and pills, and that's when it all goes bad.
So I think that is the most important couple of sentences that we've talked about so far on a human self-help guidance level, because you could take that anywhere when it comes to your life. It doesn't have to be someone taking a life in military. I mean, that's a very powerful statement. So I love that. And I think I'm going to make a little plaque with that, because that is that. I mean, that hits at the heart of having the humility to walk away.
But it's so hard, Heather. I like who wants to be humble? I don't want to be humble. I want to be the top dog. I want to be like, it's like, like we all want to be better than we all want to see ourselves better than we really are. And that's when we get hurt. That's when we hurt ourselves, and that's when we hurt others. But it is so hard to be humble. I mean, like I think that's truly life's work. Or really, that is truly life's work through all your stages of life. It's a fight for humility, whether it's in the schoolyard as a kindergartner, or, the humility and being the new guy and your first job out of college, being the new mom or dad, not having a clue, all of those milestones. And then really, when it comes down to it, gracefully aging and having the humility in old age to say, I need help. I can't do this anymore. I need a walker. I need a cane. I need an Uber, it's like elder care and all that stuff. It all boils down to humility. And we kick and scream like little kids when we're young, and we kick and scream like little kids sometimes when we're old too.
Very good point. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit to say, I can't wait to, I think in another month or two, you and I are going to jump together.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Yes. Well, I'm really excited. So everybody who's listening that knows anything about me knows my through line is get out of your comfort zone in order to grow. And I love growing. But a lot of times it terrifies me, the things that I make myself do. But afterwards, it's so, I have outrageous confidence. It's like, this is living, this is great. And what else is there that I haven't even tried? And when it comes down to helping other people, can I start a program to do something, giving back or whatever? It just completely breaks me down, and I love it because something wonderful comes out of it. And so we're going to do this together, and it'll be very interesting. When I first heard about you, don't take any offense to this, I said, well, is he kind of like the flying nun that I used to watch on TV, but now he's a priest that jumps out of a plane? I mean, that mental image just cracks me up. I'm so sorry, but I know you have a good sense of humor.
No, it's fine.
But that's crazy. So you jump out of planes, or you've trained people how to jump out of planes in like these white suits, and the white suits are when you're going into sub-zero temperatures. Is that really a thing? And does that affect how you jump? I mean, that's got to be a whole next level.
Question. Well, that's a great question. So when you see us in the white, like I think I know the picture you're thinking of. When I was in Alaska, we'd wear what's called Arctic camouflage, and Arctic camouflage is white. It depends, but you have to be judicious with it too. If if it's freshly fallen snow and everything's white, then you're in white. But if like around springtime, what we call breakup in Alaska, where it starts to break up, maybe what you'll do is, because the white's in the mountains, but now it's getting muddy, you'll only wear a white top, but you'll leave the camouflage bottoms because you'll blend in better than just this white dot walking across the mud.
Oh, gosh.
So that's just all that is really Arctic camouflage. But we can jump in it. For a military jump, I'll give you this. Like, I'm excited, and I really am excited to jump with you, and I'm grateful. Thanks for like encouraging me to get out of my comfort zone, get off the couch. And what I'm pursuing here is skydiving, which is different than paratrooping. The best analogy I can give you is in military paratrooping is all about getting on the ground as quickly as you can. We jump at about 1,200 feet, sometimes 1,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
1,500 feet would be like a nice jump. Like that.
How do you have time to get your chute open? Yeah. How do you have time to get your chute open?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Like, it's a quick open and you're on the ground. This is not sightseeing. This is not ooh and ah, and let's like turn and take selfies and all that. This is out of the plane on the ground as best, as fast as we can, as safely as we can to go and, and accomplish the mission. That's what paratrooping is about. Whereas, and that's why when I asked you, like, how do you want to do this? Because I didn't know if you want, because I could have given you an experience of that. There are places that we could go as civilian, like you as a civilian, I could bring you to a military jump club and you could experience that. You could experience like what it is, and you'd actually be on your own. There'd be some training, and you'd do
be on
all
my
the
own
movements that you see a trooper do, handing off your static line, getting a tight body position, and jumping out the door on your own. And it would really be all on your own, which is kind of interesting.
That's actually absolutely terrifying.
So that being said, military paratrooping is kind of like camping on the ground, like sleeping on the ground with just like a thin poncho in the rain. You know, it's just like, it's bare bones. You're eating out of envelopes. It's military training. That's military paratrooping. Skydiving is like glamping in a really nice Airstream trailer.
Okay. I didn't know.
It's just, it's a different experience. You're going there to enjoy it. So you're going to heights like that. I haven't even done anything lower than 3,500 feet in civilian skydiving. I mean, the lowest jump I've had is 3,500 feet. And now, so I'm in the progression of my training so that I talk about humility. I'll say it out loud. When we started talking about this, the first thing that went to my head was, wait, if we do this, I'm going to have to do this with you as a tandem jumper. I'm like, no self-respecting jump master from the Army is going to be a tandem jumper. I'm jumping out on my own. I got to hurry up and get my A license so I can jump out on my own. So that's, yeah. So 30, like we'll be jumping well over 3. I don't know what they'll put you out as a tandem. I don't know the height for that, but it's going to be well over 3,000 feet.
Well, I'd like to get on the ground as soon as possible, but I mean, it's just like walking into a hospital saying, I need a heart transplant and I'm going to operate on myself. No, I need someone who's qualified and I want nothing to do with the mechanics of it. I want someone else to handle everything. And then if you can give me 5 parachutes, backup parachutes on top of it, I'm okay with that. So
fair enough.
Yeah, that's where we're going to go. Well, this is going to be a very fun. I'm very excited for this jump because we're going to try and live stream the jump. We're going to try and record it, and we'll see how we do. If I can even actually form a word when we get up there in the airplane. I did this. I went up in a fighter jet, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do with the G's. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, and I was.
What did they pull you to? What did they pull you to?
I went to 5 G's. Now I want to go more. But 5 G's will pull your face back and pull your stomach and your throat. And
did you take a nap?
I didn't.
Good.
Because he coached me on, I thought for sure I was either going to, lose my lunch before we went up or I was going to pass out. And I was like, please don't let me, but I did a live podcast. We went upside down 8 times, did something called a Cuban 8. We did a roll. And then the first 20 seconds, I was like, oh, that takeoff was great. All of a sudden I'm upside down. And he goes, well, I thought I'd get it the first one out of the way. And then we continued on with that. It was so exhilarating and so much fun. And I kept it together. But my mouth was so dry from the nervous anticipation as we were taking off. I'm like, I don't even think I can ask a question. Of course, you can't have a bottle of water or anything like that. I did. So having said that, who knows what I'm going to be like in the plane? I mean, let's just
fine.
Let's just see how it goes. But yeah, I'll be relying on you literally. So we're going to have a good time with this. And I thank you so much for your service, so much for, speaking to everyone about all of these really important things, because even if you're not in the military, you have so many words of wisdom, positivity, of hope, and your message is just so solid. And I think this is going to reach a lot of people. Maybe they weren't ready for this to come in, but whoever's listening to this at this particular point, there's a reason why you were listening. And I think you just gave them a message.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather, for giving me this platform. I think it's great what you do, in this whole idea of mentorship and pushing people. We need each other to push each other. If I can give a shameful plug for me and my team, you can follow what we do at fr.uncle.sam on Instagram. And that's me and my team and our efforts to go out and about with this guy.
I love it.
Do what we have to do to bring priests into the Army. Thank you so much for this opportunity, though. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I love it. And we will catch up soon and we will be in the air, hopefully above 3,500 feet.
Will do.
Thank you, Father Pete. We'll talk to you very soon.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Mentors and Moguls podcast. We hope you've been inspired by the incredible stories and wisdom shared by our esteemed guest. If you've enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review and share it with others that may benefit from the valuable insights shared here. Until next time, stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep making your mark in the world.